Welcome to this explainer. I am absolutely thrilled you're joining us today because we're going to use some highly actionable neuroscience to completely hack our habit formation and in the process dismantle some very persistent old myths. We all want to build better routines and break the destructive ones, but so often we rely on sheer willpower or outdated advice that honestly just sets us up for frustration. Today, we're looking directly under the hood at how the nervous system learns, how neuroplasticity actually engages, and how we can use the biological mechanics of our own brains to make success completely reflexive. Get this, it's actually staggering to realize just how much of our lives run on pure autopilot. An estimated 70% of our waking behavior is entirely habitual. 70%! That means the vast majority of what you do, from the second you wake up to the minute your head hits the pillow, isn't actually conscious decision-making, it's a pre-programmed routine. So if we really want to change our lives, our focus shouldn't just be on that 30% of conscious effort, it needs to be squarely on rewriting the underlying 70%.
But to actually rewire those habits, we've got to shatter the most common myth out there first. If you've ever tried to build a habit, you've probably been told it takes 21 days. Well, prepare to have your mind blown by this number, 254. A fascinating study published in 2010 by a researcher named Lally proved that the whole 21 days rule is a total oversimplification. The reality? For different individuals trying to form a single habit, it can actually take anywhere from 18 days to as many as 254 days.
So, here is our roadmap for today's explainer. First, the 21-day habit myth. Second, beating limbic friction. Third, the power of task bracketing. And fourth, breaking bad habits immediately.
All right, diving into section 1, the 21-day habit myth and why your past failures are absolutely not your fault.
Look, it is absolutely vital to understand that struggling to make a habit stick doesn't mean you lack discipline. Human beings are just highly variable. Sticking to standard advice that claims habits take exactly 18, 21, or 30 days is basically setting ourselves up to fail. As the Lally study showed, the scientific reality is a massive range, anywhere from 18 to 254 days. Successful habit formation isn't about crossing an arbitrary number of days off a calendar, it's about engaging your brain's neuroplasticity at your own unique pace.
Moving right along to section 2, beating limbic friction, or how to overcome that deep resistance to just getting started. If forming a habit can take way longer than 21 days, how do we push through that heavy, dragging resistance to actually start? The source material calls this limbic friction. It's the literal biological barrier to adopting and executing new habits. You know that feeling when you're physically fighting yourself just to get off the couch? Yeah, that's limbic friction. But thankfully, neuroscience hands us a remarkably simple solution to bypass it. To beat that limbic friction, we've got to talk about memory. In neuroscience, there's a huge distinction between episodic memory, which is recalling a specific past event, like what you did for your last birthday, and procedural memory. Procedural memory is holding in your mind the specific sequence of actions needed for a certain outcome. Think of it kind of like a recipe, or your sets and reps at the gym. Shifting your brain deeply into this procedural memory mode is the absolute key to crushing limbic friction.
Okay, so how do we actually do that? You use hypergranular procedural memory visualization. Take making an espresso, for example. You don't just vaguely think, I'm going to make coffee. You break it way down. Step 1, walk into the kitchen. Step 2, turn on the machine. Step 3, draw the espresso. You literally think through the exact steps from start to finish. And the best part? You don't need to sit cross-legged on the floor, eyes closed, desperately trying to meditate on this. You just mentally walk through the literal physical steps.
Now, here's where it gets really cool. The research on this is incredibly robust. Just doing a simple mental run-through of those specific steps, even just once, dramatically shifts the likelihood that you'll perform that habit regularly. Not just the first time you try it, but continuing into the days and weeks that follow. You are essentially handing your brain a map, so it doesn't have to burn precious energy figuring out the terrain when it's time to take action. Which brings us to section 3, the power of task bracketing and how to make your habits entirely context-independent. If that procedural visualization we just talked about is the map, task bracketing is the engine. Deep inside our brains, we have this set of neural circuits called the basal ganglia, and they manage our behavior. They're broken into go circuits for taking action and no-go circuits for suppressing action. Almost nobody has a perfect balance of both, but task bracketing takes advantage of these exact circuits. So what exactly is task bracketing? It involves specific neural circuits dedicated to framing the events that happen right before, during, and right after you initiate a habit. It acts like a reflexive marker.
What's wild is that engaging a specific brain area called the dorsolateral striatum actually primes and warms up your body and brain to execute the habit. It essentially casts a spotlight around a specific block of time.
And when task bracketing gets deeply embedded, your habit becomes totally context independent. The absolute best analogy for this is brushing your teeth. Even if you get a terrible night's sleep, even if you're super distracted, or frankly, even if everything in your life is going wrong that day, you still reflexively carry out the behavior of brushing your teeth. That is a deeply task-bracketed habit. Your brain has created a fingerprint that says, hey, this thing has to happen regardless of your emotional state.
So how do we train our brains to do this? Let's say someone is trying to build a Zone 2 cardio habit. You don't just reward the workout itself. Before the habit, you need to positively anticipate the hard effort. Then, you execute the cardio. And finally, afterward, you apply a subjective reward to the entire experience. You are consciously rewarding the whole task bracket: the warm-up, the struggle, the execution, and the finish line.
All right, our final section, number 4, breaking bad habits immediately using the double habit trick. Now, this addresses a massive pain point for, well, pretty much all of us. I want you to consider this quote carefully. Take advantage of the fact that the neurons responsible for generating that bad habit were active a moment ago. Normally, we obsess over our state of mind leading up to a failure, right? But the source reveals that the period immediately after the bad habit is actually a highly potent window of opportunity.
Let's walk through the exact sequence here. We'll use the universal guilt of mindlessly picking up your smartphone when you're supposed to be doing focused work. Okay, so you reflexively pick up the phone. The trick is to execute an immediate pivot. You set it down and instantly engage in a new, positive, adaptive behavior. Maybe you drink a glass of water, do a quick breathing exercise, or spend 5 minutes practicing a language. You literally exit the bad behavior and perform a new habit in the immediate aftermath.
Why does this work so well? By inserting a replacement behavior right after a mistake, you're biologically linking the bad behavior to a good behavior. This recruits entirely new neural circuits that actually begin to dismantle that old sequence of firing. It creates a temporal mismatch in your brain. Over time, recognizing that you're even heading toward the bad habit becomes glaringly obvious to you before you even make the mistake.
You are literally hijacking the active momentum of a mistake to build a positive neuroplastic opportunity. It's a total game changer. So I want to leave you with this provocative challenge. What positive habit are you going to pair with your next bad one? The next time you slip up, remember that you are in a prime biological window to rewire your basal ganglia. Don't feel guilty, feel empowered to pivot. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep learning, keep structuring those task brackets, and we'll see you next time.